By the end of this video, you will be able to answer the following key points. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the quarterfinals of the Chessable Masters. This is Ding Liren versus Hikaru Nakamura. Ding Liren is Chinese number 1. Hikaru Nakamura is American number 1 in rapid chess. Both players have 15 minutes on the clock, with 10 seconds added per move. Ding Liren has white, Hikaru Nakamura has black. The game began. D4, D5, C4, and the first surprise, D takes C4. This is the Queen's Gambit accepted. Normally, Nakamura plays the Queen's Gambit declined, so something like this. D4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, bishop e7. Hikaru tends to maintain his pawn center, but in this game he decided to surprise Ding Liren with capturing. White now goes for the most critical setup with e4, gaining the center. Now the bishop on f1 can capture on c4. So how does black react? Because already it looks like white has a really nice position with the center, and he's going to get his pawn back. Knight f6, you've got to attack your opponent's center. So you push forward, knight d5, bishop c4, and knight b6. Why does black play this opening? Because maybe these center pawns are a weakness, but white is saying these center pawns are a strength. Are they a bit too far advanced? We'll see. Now knight b6 attacks this bishop, so we drop it back. And black now plays knight c6. Do not fall for this opening trap. Taking on d4. This is not a pawn because white can win the queen with bishop b5 check. White queen attacks the black queen. So knight c6, queen takes d4. So after bishop d3, knight c6 attacking the center, knight f3, no, cut. Knight c6 attacking the center, and white defends with bishop e3. Just got to be a bit careful. You don't want to play knight f3 because bishop g4 and there's some pressure in the center. So if you do move the knight, you can go to e2 because if bishop g4, you can kick it away. But Ding Liren goes bishop e3 first, not giving black the option to get this bishop out to an easy square like g4. Black has to do something else. And for that, he goes knight b4, another knight move, attacking white's bishop. So he puts it right in the middle. So far, what have we noticed? Black's got both knights out. White's got both bishops out. Bishop to e4, and now a shocking move, you could say. Because if you're a beginner, you're told not to move your f-pawn. But we're striking in the center and we're attacking the bishop. So f5. And now white doesn't move his bishop. He goes a3, attacking the knight. Now in the game, knight d5 was played. But I just want to show you a very famous game with f takes e4, a takes b4, and now e6. I'll tell you the players soon. Because after knight c3, you give the pawn, but then queen h5 check, g6, queen g4. White's got ideas of trying to break up the pawn chain with h4, h5. Take, take, queen d5, knight e2, white is also ready to get castled. And after queen c4, knight g3, white's got lots of possibilities, and white ended up winning this game. Rook a5 to c5 was seen. The knight can take on e4. Maybe white can even go h4, h5. This was Kramnik against Karyakin in March 2014 in the Candidates Tournament. Back to this game, Nakamura put his knight in the center. Ding Liren, being the top player he is, being the Chinese number 1, plays the most critical line with bishop takes d5. Another option, which may look more sensible, just to keep the bishop. This was seen between David Navarra and Caruana. Bishop d7 played by Caruana to put the bishop on c6. Knight h3, bishop here. Knight c3, e6. Castle, queen d7. And in this position, black castled and went on to win. So after bishop d5, knight d5 played, and now knight c3. So it looks like white has just given up the bishop pair. But what's the argument? There's a silly pawn on f5, and also this bishop cannot get to the g4 square now. So maybe it is worth giving up the bishop pair. Now another option here was actually to take with the queen. Knight f3, knight f3, white can castle next, so if black stops it with queen c4, then knight c3. And the point is we're going to chase this queen away. Then we can castle. Bishop e6, knight e2, and I think white has a really nice position. Maybe that's why people don't play queen takes d5. There are no games in the Chess24 database. White will castle next, but also white can attack the queen with rook c1 and knight g5. Attacks the bishop. It also makes sense that after bishop takes d5, your knight on b6 is doing nothing, so let's just get it into the center. Knight takes d5, knight c3, and here knight takes e3 played. So after this, we really do have a middle game imbalance. It's two knights against two bishops. Now in this position, you could go bishop e6, then queen d7, and then castle queenside. But after knight e2, it's just a different game. So if we take, and then take, white's got a threat of d5, so let's put a stop to that with c6. And then castle. And the game goes on. However, Nakamura chose to grab it, take, and now e6. Knight e2, g6, knight f4, bishop h6. Knight e2, knights defend each other, c6, stopping d5 in the future. So c6 played, h4, a5, king f2. So Ding chooses not to castle. So he puts his king on f2 instead. So let's see what happens. Castle, queen b3, attacking e6. Let's defend with rook e8. Rook c1 and rook a6. Just want to go back here, because I was wondering why not open up the black kingside with a move like g4. Because maybe you're opening it up for black. So let's just have a look. Maybe both kings are in a little bit of danger. Rook g1, b6 let's say, rook g4, c5. So then the bishop can go to b7. Rook g1 looks very dangerous, so we can just play a calm move like king h8, and in a position like this, black's doing okay. The rook can go to a7, maybe shuffle over to f7. The rook can go back to f8, the bishop can go to b7, and also at the moment, white might need to make a decision with his center pawns. So back to the game, rook c1 chosen. Ding doesn't go for a kingside attack yet. Rook a6, g3, bishop f8, rook d1, king h8. So a lot of maneuvering. Rook c3, rook b6, put the queen on c2. Maybe white will triple. So then we have two rooks and a queen. Bishop d7, knight d3. Two ideas. This knight can go to f4. This knight can come to c5. Rook e7, knight c5, bishop e8. Knight f4, bishop f7. And let's have a look at this middle game imbalance. I've said it before. Two knights against two bishops. The bishop on f7 is really like a big pawn. The two knights are doing a great job attacking e6. This bishop not doing anything at the moment. Rook c4, maybe planning b4, maybe the rook can shuffle over to a4 to attack the a5 pawn. Rook e8, so now this bishop is useful, giving black the option to take, because this knight is better than this bishop, so maybe black will take in the future. Rook d2, queen e7, queen c3. Okay, so hinting at ideas of b4, and then maybe the rook can shuffle over to c2, maybe to b2, to a2. Rook a8, rook a4, Rook b5, defending from the side. Rook c4, rook b6. So just a repetition here. You don't want to play b4, which is a bit of a mistake. If you take, and if you take back with the pawn, then you can go rook a4 and then take on b4. But now, there's actually another great option. It's because this knight is defending this rook. So if we can get rid of it, we're actually using the rook to attack the queen. So you have to deal with this, but then your rook is now hanging. So that's a nice tactic there. Rook c4, rook b6, queen c2, king g8, rook d3. White wants to swap off black's most active piece, h6. Black has to do something. Rook b3, take, and now g5. Take, and knight d3. So I really like the way Ding has played in this game. It's move 37, but really the game has just begun. The two knights support each other. Black has opened up the king side. This bishop can now come in the game. b5, attacking the rook, and also notice in this position both knight and queen were attacking the pawn, only the queen was defending it. So b5 was chosen. Another option is rook b8, but then maybe queen b6. Might be a little bit annoying. Hikaru goes for b5, pushing the rook back, a4, and now queen a2. Keeping the queen attacking this pawn. Another option, maybe the queen could go to d1, swinging over to the king side. So bishop g6, let's say queen h1. Now attacking c6, but also planning to go to h3, then the rook can join the party. So queen h1, let's defend our pawn, queen h3, the rook can come over, bishop g7, rook h1, there's still some pressure. Maybe white can actually open up the king side, maybe go g4, but then it does bring this bishop in the game. Now back to the game, Ding chose queen a2, queen e8, knight to b4, rook c8, and king e1. This is where Ding Liren blunders. A better option was knight d3, just keeping control. And then, I've mentioned it already, the rook and the queen can swing to the king side. If queen d8, rook h1, bishop g7, let's say queen b1, queen e7, swing over, bishop g6, queen g2, just like before. Let's go queen e8. Now, if you do this, you give white an option of knight b7, so you've got to be careful. It's important to keep this queen along here. If queen g2, maybe you're just waiting really. Rook c7, king e2, and then maybe something like g4, trying to break it apart. Rook c7, rook g1, something like this. Bishop h6, and a really cool tactic in this variation is actually knight f4. Wow. And finally, there's a breakthrough, not on the queen, but the king side. If you take it, then this is working out really nice. You got double pressure on the g file, and this bishop is going to drop. So if you take it, then queen g6 is just losing. White is just coming through bishop g7. You got a few options you can take here. The knight can go to e6, which looks really strong because the knight on e6 will attack the bishop on g7 and the rook. So after this, it looks like game over. If you move the rook, then it looks like we're collecting everything. We can go here. Let's just finish off. Maybe this is a very clean ending. And now we've gone into a pawn ending. We've got 5 against 4, and this is winning. White can even throw this in and then bring the king in. However, in the game, Ding blundered with king e1, allowing bishop takes c5, which looks like black's good bishop. But no, the king side is open, so black actually has a better bishop. So let's get rid of this strong knight on c5, take with the rook, and bishop h5. Now black is back in the game because this bishop, which has been a passive defender, now comes to life. It's controlling lots of squares from the h5 to the d1 diagonal, but it's got another option. It can come to f3, then it can park itself on e4 or on d5. King d2, bishop f3, king c3. Ding wants to get his king off the back. Then the queen can come round to the king side, but is it a bit too late? King g7, so then black can come round. Not with the queen, because the queen could have come round straight away, but with the rook, queen b1, bishop e4, why not attack it and park itself on a perfect central square? Queen e1, queen h8, b3. Now if you go queen g1, stopping black coming in, then you can go queen h5, then the rook can swing as well. King d2, rook h8, we're coming in. Doesn't matter if you take here, queen f3 is just so dangerous. d5, rook h1, it should be over. Knight d4, if you bring your knight back, you can just take it, take, d6. There's plenty of time because this bishop and this rook control the d1 square. So rook d1 check, we're good. King c3, bishop e2. You might as well use your bishop to protect your pawn. This rook is on the d file, stopping this marching forward. Also, the king can come back. In the game, b3 was played. Queen h2, b takes a4, take rook a5, king g6. Rook a6, giving black the chance to open up the c file. Another option was rook c5 and then rook h8. Black is going to come in anyway. However, Ding played rook a6, and let's get rid of the c6 pawn by pushing it c5. Rook takes e6 check, not to worry. King f7. White only has a rook in the attack. Only one piece. But black has 1, 2, 3 pieces in the attack. Rook f6 check, let's just hide. And if we take on c5, rook takes c5 check. Where can the king go? Can't go back here, can't go forward, or here, or here, so it's, or here. There we go. Only one square, king to d4. Rook back to c8. And if black can throw in another check very soon, it should be all over. Knight d5. Because this queen is planning to swing over to b2. So knight d5 played. If you play a move like queen a1, stopping that, well, you give black another entry square with queen d2 check, and that is it. The king cannot go anywhere. The c file is covered, but it can block with the knight, but after you block, you just take it, and that is checkmate. So after rook c8, queen b2 check is black's threat, and you can't stop it. Knight d5, queen b2 check, knight c3, and queen b3, and white resigned because queen c4 is mate. You've also got rook d8. If you try to stop that, then you lose the knight. So a move like queen e2, you're going to take this knight. Queen e2, checkmate. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. If you feel you've got a bit better at chess, then subscribe to this channel. Here are the key points. In the opening, the most critical line in the Queen's Gambit accepted for now might be 8 f5 attacking the bishop, but then white plays a3 attacking the knight. In the middle game, it's imbalanced. White has 2 knights, black has 2 bishops. White's strategy could have been to transfer the queen and rook to the kingside, then strike in that amazing variation with g4 and then knight f4. Middle game finish, black freed his position and got his passive bishop from f7 to a perfect central square on e4. If you enjoyed the show, if you think you've got a little bit better at chess having watched this video, then subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit that bell, then you'll get notified each time I release a new video. How to support the channel, there's a donation link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end.